Hi, Penny.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I am fine. I am very good.
Well, thank you for having me in your home. It's so nice to be here and to see you again. And last time we met was when I was being interviewed on your show, which I had such a joy doing. It was so nice to talk to you, and I love the philosophy and purpose of your show. And I guess the first question for me is like, what do you enjoy most about that role, being the interviewer and getting to know people in that way?
Exactly what your question is the answer. I like getting to know people. I like getting information. And somebody said to me recently that I am a good listener. And I am a good listener. And all the things that I have done in my life, in my career, what I call my second career that I'm doing now in the media, but my real career, my real job as a judge, as a lawyer, involved listening. And I find that I was very complimented. That was, I thought, a nice thing to say. And I do listen because I'm interested in people. I'm definitely a people person. Everything I've done in my life, I've always been a people person. And I think I enjoy learning about other people, and like the interviewing part that I'm doing now in the media, that's a continuation of what I've done as a lawyer on the bench, as a person. I just like learning about people and hearing their life story and hearing what they've done before and what their goals are and how interesting everybody is.
I couldn't agree more with all of that. Many questions coming out of that. So let me, getting to know people, obviously being an interviewer, that's an obvious way to do that. But when you refer to kind of the same role as a judge and a lawyer and getting to know people, and can you elaborate on that? Because I'm just curious of that dynamic, getting to know people through that practice.
Well, I had to, as a judge, going back to being a lawyer, which started first, I had whoever my client was. I was like a public defender most of the time. I would have to listen to what the defendant's story was, how they got where they are, what the facts were of the case. I had to listen to the witnesses, other people that were involved, and it was always a matter of, it's hard to get to the truth. It's always hard to find the truth. And I do know that people very often not just so much lie, but try to put themselves in the best light. I mean, they try, and that's human nature. I think it's human nature. You want to be liked by other people. You want to be respected, no matter what your station in life. And so you always tell whatever happened, for example, in the best light that you can for yourself. And I understand that. And I understand that there is a motivation sometimes for not telling the truth, or for expanding on it, or elaborating on it, or tilting it a certain way. I understand that, but that's human nature.
It is human nature. And so how does, listening, right, you're paying attention, are you looking for those clues in people's stories?
Yes, not just listening, but which is why I like to do like interviews in person, or like in court. It always was in person until, recently, where with COVID and everything else, we had Zoom or whatever. And even my interviews now, I don't like to do them on the phone. I like to do them in person, because you can learn about people by their expression, from their eyes, from the way they hold their head, for example, or move their body. You know that? Everyone gives certain clues. It's easier to understand a person when you're actually looking at them than just hearing them.
I couldn't agree more. Again, and that's one of the reasons I do this like this, is because there's so much more to you than just the words that are coming out of your mouth. Right? There's
Definitely.
so much to see, hear, and learn. And so the practice of listening for you, a great skill of yours, and that's wonderful. But And I would say I'm very good at it these days, but it took me a long time to learn it. And I think I was in my 20s. I was like, I need to be a better listener. And took me 20 years to really get really good at it. Like, what was the journey like for you, or were you always a good listener?
You know, I think I was always good at listening, but I do laugh because I think about, like, in court, I really had to be totally neutral and keep a straight face, I call it, and not show any emotion or not show any reaction. That was really hard for me. And so, because it's not my nature, because I'm very, I think, expressive person. And I had a court reporter who was below the bench to my side, and I'm the same person. We developed a close relationship over the years, of course. And she had to take down, every word that was being spoken. And sometimes we would have a witness, and the witness would be saying the most ridiculous thing, or you knew that the witness wasn't telling the truth, or whatever she was saying or he was saying was not true. And I would try not to look over, but my court reporter would be going like this and going, rolling her eyes, and she would make me laugh. So I was like, I'm not looking at Lily, I'm not looking at her, I'm not looking at her, because she'd be going. So, yeah.
Okay, we'll pivot a little bit. So, what are the parts of life that you enjoy the most? What brings you the most joy?
Now? Well, I haven't had as much joy since my husband passed away, and since I had to retire, as I did in the past. I'll tell you that. So it's been like 6 or 7 years. Both happened. I had to retire from the bench, and my husband passed away almost within the same year. So now I think I'm having joy in the fact that my daughter, I only have one daughter, lives right next door to me, and my son-in-law and my granddaughter, and they're right next door. So I'm following their lives much more closely and spending much more time than I did when I was working, and when I didn't live far away, but when the distance was, we weren't like next door. We weren't like in each other's backyard. So now I think that I'm getting the most joy. My granddaughter is already starting college, and I'm loving that she calls me and I'm following what she's doing, and it's interesting to me, how she's growing up and what's happening in her life.
I can only imagine, that's
yeah, it's very rewarding.
To have a child is one thing, but to have a grandchild, like that next generation, is really just a marvel.
Yeah, it really is. I want to say I didn't have time for it, but we weren't as close, and it wasn't as important in my life as it was when I was working and when I was married and when I had, so much responsibility and in my job, in my career, in my profession. So now that I have the time, it kind of worked out well.
Yeah, that's lovely that it's worked out like this. And so, so that's now. So then, what's brought you the most joy in your life? What are the things that you really have just continued to bring you happiness?
Well, I think, truthfully, my husband. Being married, I was married to one person my entire life, which is kind of unusual in this day and age, I guess, for 60 years. And he was my best friend, my bedrock, my counselor, my advisor, my lover. I mean, he was everything in my life. And he actually was totally responsible for my success in my career. Not just advising, but and he always was the biggest supporter, whatever I did. He was such a big supporter. And people always would say that to me. Michael is your biggest supporter, He's your biggest, talks about you all the time. He's so proud of you, And so I think, we traveled. We had a wonderful life together. And we had our professions in common. So he was an attorney. And we just had, and also our relationship grew, obviously, because when I met, I was graduating from law school. How young I was. I just went to school my whole life. From, little school, middle school, high school, college, law school. That was it. And then I got married. So obviously, it didn't seem like I was young then, but when I think about it, I was in my middle 20s. That's kind of young. And so, and Michael was 11 years older, so he was more experienced and he knew more about the world. So we kind of grew together. And with our careers, with my career as it progressed, with our lives, with traveling, with having a daughter, I only have one daughter. And so, I don't know, my greatest joy was being with Michael.
Well, it's wonderful to hear as well. I mean, just what an amazing experience, to have, for the majority of your life to be able to spend it with someone like that is just, what everyone dreams of.
It is what everyone should have, and I'm so sad to find out how few people do. It's so sad to me. I remember when my very good girlfriend one time, we said something about I had been married, let's say 30 years at that point. I was married 30 years, and she said to me, well, I am too if you can add my 2 marriages together. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. It's like one person,
Yeah, I mean, 60 years, it's an incredible amount of time. And just the amount of life you must have lived, especially if you were traveling as well. And
yes, we both loved traveling. And I know when he got older and it was more difficult before he passed away, even we were reminiscing and saying, we're so glad that we went to all those places and did all that while we were young. And also, we progressed in our lives. We started out, I don't want to say poor, but just out of school. I was out of school. I mean, I was getting paid $3 for my so little money. And then each year, I progressed. As a matter of fact, as far as money goes, I took one job after another until I found the kind of law that I was interested in. And Michael once said to me, you're the only one I know that just goes from one job to the other and makes less money. I said, I don't know, it just happened that way. I was working for legal aid, whatever. But we just started out with not a lot of money, but enjoying traveling at $5 a day. Then we progressed. And I remember I had a bucket list sort of in the last 10 years and saying to him, I wish I would go back to Nice and stay at the Negresco Hotel. And so we did that. There were certain things that I said, I'd love to be at that hotel, and we did,
So you mentioned, why was that place special to you?
Oh, I don't know, because when we were traveling on $5 a day type thing, I remember certain places that we would go into the lobby, or that hotel, for example, in the Negresco it's in Nice, or the famous one in where the movies Cannes. There was one in Cannes that we wanted to go to, and I remember looking and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could stay here? Look at these people. Look how glorious this is. Look how elegant this is. So it must have been something in my mind, someday I'm going to do that. And then we did. So it was great.
That's lovely. Are there any other trips you went on that were very special for the two of you that really...
We actually, all of our trips, of course, were wonderful, but we actually had a period of time when Michael had a client and I had a friend who owned a big chain of grocery stores here in Buffalo. And he was a very important businessman here, and Michael represented him, and I became friends with them. And they had corporate trips where they would take people who were grocers in the grocery business, vendors and what, on this incentive trip. And they were the most glorious, exciting trips because they were all organized, and we went to Russia, for example, when it was still Russia, when you couldn't leave the hotel without somebody, you couldn't walk on your own in the street without somebody being with you. And we went to Hong Kong, and everywhere we went, he had the person who organized the trips, Charlie. he had a band meet us, and he had executives come and talk to us, and he took us to private palaces, and it was very exciting. And so we did. I liked Italy when we went to Rome and Italy, and it was very exciting. And Hong Kong was unique, and Russia, of course. So I've been everywhere that I wanted to be.
Yeah, that's amazing, especially the Russia element. I'm so curious. The closest I got to Russia was flying. I flew on a Russian border control helicopter across the border of Russia and Georgia over the mountains, which was a very cool experience. But that's the closest I've got.
Well, it was, like I said, it was still when it was Russia before. It was like there was nothing to buy, there was no merchandise, there was control everywhere. There was, Moscow was, I want to say, we stayed at the best hotel that they had, and I went into the bathroom the first day we got there, and I took this towel, and I said to Michael, look at this, and there was like a big hole in the towel, and the food was absolutely disgusting. I mean, I'm not that good of an eater to begin with. Obviously, I don't eat a lot of things, and I had so much peanut butter. I never had so much peanut butter in my life. I never went on a trip where I lost weight. It was horrible. But interestingly enough, this person who was running the trip to Russia was, I said, a grocer who owned this chain. And one day he had steaks flown in from Buffalo to, I don't think we were in Moscow, maybe St. Petersburg, for a dinner. And so we had, and there was caviar, which nobody liked but me.
Wow, your time in Russia, what was some of the things that surprised you that really were shocks to you?
It wasn't so much of a shock, but I really, I found Moscow horrible. It was so gray, and everything was, they had a Coke machine. They were big on Coca-Cola or Pepsi. I think they still are, in the square, out in the street. And there was this machine, and people would come up and use the same cup, put the cup on, there was a cup there, and they put the same cup under it. I thought, oh my God, these people are really repressed. However, what I really loved was, and we went to the subway, it's not called the subway. I'm from New York, the metro. In New York, it's the subway. And they did take us on a trip, with guards. I mean, we never took one step by ourselves without guides. We did go on the, I was surprised and it was very pretty. It had artwork and so forth. It was nice. But St. Petersburg is well worth, I mean, you haven't seen anything until you've been to St. Petersburg and the palace and the art, and it was fabulous. Church, everything.
I mean, I would like to experience that.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about it, whether I will.
Yeah.
Who knows these days? But that's fascinating. It reminded me when you were talking about eating. I was in Cuba in 2008.
Oh, did you?
I was there for a few weeks, which was amazing traveling around. But the food there was not great. It was really difficult. And after a couple of, I think it was like 3 weeks, the buddies I was with, we ended up going to Veradero, which is this the resort part of Cuba, like the 5-star resorts, and we just ate for 2 days and then got back on the trip because we needed food in us. And so it's amazing. I mean, it really made me think about what we have back at home, right? And the luxury that we have and the access to so much we have.
I know. In those days, they had the government owned the stores. I can't think of what. So we did go in. They did take us into one of their government-owned stores, and I can see why they wanted a new government and why they had to do what they did in Russia, because it was like empty shelves and nothing. I mean, they always talk about how we have such a variety and how we have an overabundance here in America, in the United States.
I agree with the overabundance. It's hard to see what a lot of people eat here and the effect it has on them, or knowing the effect it has on them.
Yes.
So then, what about Buffalo for you? Like as a home, as a place, like how has this really contributed to your experience and added to it?
It is hard to believe that I didn't live here my whole life. But as I think of, and now people are finding out. People, because I've been so, I don't know, prominent or such a public figure, people always assume that I was born here in Buffalo. And they'll say, very often people say to me, oh, I went to high school with you in Kenmore High School, or Tonawanda, you were in my book, in my class book, and I'm like, not really, but a lot of times I would just let it go by because I don't want, people to think, oh, I'm a snob. No, I wasn't born here, no. But it was such a different world coming from Manhattan. I was born in New York City, and in the city. And on third, everybody in my family, on my mother's side and my father's side, was born in New York City or the Bronx or Brooklyn or whatever in that area. Everybody. And I'm the only one who left too. And when I left to marry Michael, I remember my father saying a couple of years later, he said, every time the bell rang, well, I was in an apartment house, so you have to, every time the bell rang, we were on the 6th floor, and you'd have to ring the bell to get in. My father said, every time the bell rang, I turned to your mother and I said, oh my gosh, she's coming back. She's coming home. But I can't imagine living anywhere else, since my whole life was because I was here. And my father, who was really wonderful, I had a wonderful father, he said to me once, it's very good to live in a place like that, because it's like that saying of being a big fish in a little pond, whatever. And it's so much easier to make a life and to meet people, and you're really going to like it. And it turned out to be that way, because I feel like I never lived anywhere else. The people have been so welcoming my whole life. At the beginning, it was a little hard because I did miss the hustle and bustle. I was used to it. And one day, speaking of my father, when he came I was working in Buffalo, my first job as a lawyer, and he came up, and of course he had to see my office and whatever, and it was downtown Buffalo. And lunchtime, he went out downtown on Main Street, and he comes back and he says to me, there's more people on 42nd Street or 53rd Street on one block in New York than there are in the whole city of Buffalo. I said, I guess so, Dad, But it's so much easier, and it was so much easier to make friends, to make associates. Everybody embraces you once you're here. I'm sure you found that too. It's such a welcoming place, And they have, if you want to find it, we have all the culture, we have all the theater. I mean, not like New York City, but really when Shays brings shows in, and the art gallery. I mean, when I took my sister to the AKG 2 years ago, when it first was renovated, and my sister came up with my brother-in-law to visit me. I took him to the AKG. She says, this is just as beautiful as MoMA or as the Metropolitan. It really is. It's a mini version. So we have everything.
I agree with all of that. Again, I've certainly shared that welcoming experience. It's really been amazing to be here and to get to know people here, and have made so many friends, in such a short space of time. And it is very warm. And so, I guess, to me, Buffalo is an example of America and Americans. And that's I feel that, and I've felt that in different places. And obviously the representation to the world right now isn't that. And like I wish there was a way for people to kind of see what Americans are like, really, like, you know, there's the people in the news and then there's Americans. And
yeah, and they very often use the example that Buffalo is like a typical middle class, middle of the state. It's as if it was the Midwest, or, you know, it has a lot to do, it has a lot in common with all the other big, you know, and good and bad, because I always talk about how it lost its manufacturing and steel that they used to have and whatever, but it's made up for it in other ways, I think, economically. And they always used to use Buffalo as a test market, for example, when they were testing like a new product, like Cheerios or something like that. They would use Buffalo and Buffalo people because they would feel like the rest of the country, except for the extremes of New York City and California, but the whole rest of the country were really like Buffalo.
Makes a lot
Don't
of
you
sense
think?
to me.
Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, it really does feel like a good representation of like a diverse America in this city, and it's really nice for that reason. So let's think about other people. Let's think about kids today, growing up in the world, which is obviously a very different world to the one you grew up in. What are some of the things you think that are still applicable? The things that you struggled with, maybe, that you think that others might struggle with, and some advice you could offer younger folks today?
Nobody would listen to this advice, but get off your phones, get off your devices. I cannot believe how addicted people are to looking at, and you know, I find myself doing it too, like several times a day. I have to check and see who's texting me or what the emails are. But if people would just look at each other and interact and talk to each other, and not be so isolated, which they are. The young this generation is isolated because all they do is everything is online or remote, or instead of interacting with each other. And now it's going to be even worse. We just talked before about AI. I mean, everything is good. AI is not a real person. It's like, I was sitting here the other day and my friend was here and she says to me, is Alexa listening? I said, no, Alexa's in my bedroom. She's not, she was afraid, whatever she was going to say. She said, are they listening? And it's just, I think it's really sad because people are not learning how to, what we talked about at the very beginning, we're coming back, listening to each other. Young people, they don't listen to each other. They'll text something. When you text something, or when you message something, or what do they call it now? Not texting, not chat. Mm-hmm. When it's not the same as really talking to a person, you know that. And sometimes you get the wrong intonation, you don't know what they really mean, you can take it the wrong way. That's what's causing like a lot of the problems that young people are having with bullying each other, with not getting along, with saying terrible things about, it's anonymous, I'll just say, oh, I hate her, she's fat, or I hate her. Or he left me, he said this, or I said that. And another thing is, nothing is private. I mean, I would not think of telling people the most intimate details of my life that now people put on Facebook or put on, even terrible things like I'm sick or I'm being treated for cancer, God forbid, or something like that. In my day, I wouldn't put that in the news. It's like putting it in the news, saying, oh, hello everybody, I'm in the hospital now. Here's a picture of me laying in the hospital. Now, why would you do that? But they do. But people do.
It's obvious the changes from when you were growing up to now. It's like as you explained, all of those.
I know.
Kind of ripple effects of all of this technology and this way of living life.
I don't want to seem like an old fuddy-duddy, which I don't think I am, because I've tried to keep up, and especially being involved in the media like I am. But there were certain things that were better, certain principles that people had, certain ideas of privacy and of respect for each other. and for the other person's feelings, which seem to have gone out the window because they think it's anonymous. Oh, I'll if I put it on Facebook, or I'm using Facebook, but it's not what they would chat or whatever, messaging or DM, you know. But it's all the same. It's like telling everybody every part of your life, and telling bad things and thinking nobody will know it's you.
Yeah, and I think the to kind of sum up for me, the biggest piece of it is like we were promised all these new ways to connect. You know, there's thousands of ways to connect today, but actually we're more disconnected than ever. It's
Exactly.
the greatest irony of all of it.
They're not connecting at person to person.
And that was the promise, of course, and it's never been delivered, and it never will, just because of the nature of business. They can't pivot off that. So, I would also give people that advice: get off your phone, and that's really one of the big things with Q. Is I'm just trying to
Yes.
show people the value of life. And
Oh,
getting
are
out
you?
there
Yes,
and
live
doing
live
things
life and not be there sitting at your computer or sitting at home in your little isolated place working.
One more question, because we're out of time, but I'm going to give one more question.
Well, that went so fast.
I know, right? It's so nice to talk to you. And
When
so
you
easy
said,
to
"Oh," I
talk to
said,
you.
"Well, how are we going to talk that long?"
Well, let me the question is: do you enjoy these kinds of conversations with people and talking about these kinds of things? Like,
Well, you know, I love it. You know, because I love communicating. Communication is really what I think what I'm all about. What we were talking before, and I love like learning what you're doing with your new projects, and I don't know. I've gotten a little more used to talking about myself, because as I get older, people are like interested, which I don't mind. You know, I mean, I'm flattered and I'm happy that people are interested in me because I'm interested in them. But I feel like my life is an open book now. There's nothing I can say or tell that somebody doesn't know or hasn't written about or talked about in the past. Like, even my age, so I can't even keep that a secret, which I would like to.
I'll finish on a note in that you were talking earlier about your husband being your biggest supporter, and I'm very proud of you. And just to say that it's obvious why. You know, you've clearly done so much with your life, and you've worked really, really hard, clearly, and also just given so much people a lot of support and joy, it feels like, and just helped a lot of people. So I'm just going to say thank you on behalf of people.
I hope that's true. I hope that's true.
Well, before we finish, if you want to share anything else you didn't get a chance to, or you can ask me a question or anything you like.
I think we've talked about everything. I would just like to say that I'm always happy that somebody comes from another country or another area, as you are, and finds that they're comfortable and can make a life and make friends here in Buffalo. It means a lot, because I think, as you pointed out, sometimes people don't have the right idea about what it's like in Buffalo. You know, they always talk about the weather, or that it was a steel country, or that it was, you know, it's not economically viable anymore, and things like that. Negative things, instead of concentrating, which you have found, on the beauty of the architecture and the cultural advantages, and especially the people.
Again, 100% agree. We've aligned on a lot of things. And so thank you so much. This has been really nice.
You're very welcome.